Good evening, patriots and liberals. This is Spencer with the MCGA channel on YouTube. Today, we're going to dive deeper into my claim that the election in 2025 was stolen by the Liberal Party of Canada. I believe, based on evidence that I have seen, there was mass vote tampering, there was domestic interference, and I also believe that between Elections Canada, Liberal Party, and volunteers, there was coordinated effort to sabotage the Conservatives in 2025. Now, I will say, regardless of who wins in 2025, all of the data that I'm showing you is nonpartisan. It is from the lens of someone who is conservative, but the evidence, regardless of who won, is nuts. People bringing votes home is crazy, okay? Pen votes not being counted is crazy. Polls being called before votes arrive is crazy. So no matter who wins or who loses, all of what I'm showing you, that which is illegal and which is a regular occurrence according to Elections Canada, is unacceptable in 2025 in what people like to consider a first world country, of which clearly it is not. Nonetheless, what we're going to do today is we're going to dive into why the math does not math. A viewer sent me a video that inspired me to look into this deeper. Mathematically speaking, as far as the amount of votes given to the Liberals, year over year over year over year, 2025 is an anomaly. So you have to ask yourself, and people in Canada would know this from experience, was Mark Carney such a magnetic leader that he awoke a group of people, of millions of people, to get out and vote for the Liberals after a decade of insane decline, of fraud and constant scandal, enough so to re-elect the exact cabinet responsible for the fraud, the crime, and the scandals? Was Mark Carney able, in just a few months' time, to resurrect the Liberal Party from a sub 20%, a sub 20% approval rating to a near, if not now, majority win, depending on how this count continues to go? Is that what you saw with your own eyes? Was it Mark Carney setting records for turnout to rallies? No, it was the Conservatives. Mark Carney, from my own eyes, at his events, had a dismal turnout for his rallies. It is insane to believe, by the way, as far as the math is going, that all of the votes that retreated from the PPC, all of the votes that retreated from the NDP, and all of the new eligible voters went to the Liberals. What is very funny is when I was doing this preliminary calculation, the Liberals had 8.3 million votes. Now, if you were to add up, and we're going to go through it quickly, if you were to add up all of the lost votes from the NDP and from the PPC, and if you were to crazily assume that all of those would go to the Liberals, that would bring you to a figure just over 8.5 million. And what is funny to me is, as of recording this video, the newly revised number for the Liberals is 8.5 million, which is incredible. My hypothetical number was off by a few thousand. Truly, you'll see. So I started doing this calculation a little under a week ago when it was 8.3 million votes for the Liberals, and my hypothetical brought us to 8.5. And now, with a new recount, flipping ridings Liberal, the Liberals have pulled off 8.5 million votes. Just saying it is unbelievable, but let's look at the data specifically. So, as of today, May 8th, 2025, the most recent validated data for the 2025 Canadian federal election, based on web sources, indicates that the Liberal Party received 8,595,449 votes. The preliminary account was 8,335,105. Again, the revised 8,557,778, and you'll see the data that we go through all PPC NDP hypothetical brings us to 8,543,193. Obviously, there are other factors, but it's just really funny just doing that PPC NDP hypothetical and now seeing the new numbers today. I'm off by 14,000 votes. Incredible. So in 2025, 2021, 2019, and 2015, we're going to be looking at those numbers for all parties. So in 2015, when Justin Trudeau came on the scene and was going to legalize pot and everyone was down on the Conservatives, they were able to get 6.9 million votes. The CPC got 5.6, NDP 3.4, Bloc Québécois 800,000, Greens 600,000, and the PPC, of course, did not exist. 2019, after Mr. Trudeau's first go of things, he was able to pull off 6 million votes. The CPC rised about 600,000. The NDP had dropped about 500,000 to 2.8. Bloc Québécois had gone up, you'll see, of course, here, about 500,000 votes. The Green Party nearly doubled, and the PPC came on the scene with just shy of 300,000 votes. Now, in 2015, there was a total of 17.7 million votes with a population of 35 million. In 2018, there was only 300,000 more votes. However, there was a population of 37.5 million. The population makes sense. The total increase in vote numbers is, not insane and is typical, which we'll see on the following chart. But we go to 2021, the COVID election. People didn't want to go out to vote. People were turned off by the Conservative Party with Erin O'Toole, and we're just, it was COVID lockdowns. Right? Canada was a increasingly insane place day after day, and folks just didn't really do a whole lot, you all remember. Nonetheless, 21, the Liberals pull off 5,500,000 votes, again, burdened, by the way, by endless scandals at this point. Literally, they were in the middle of a scandal with the Winnipeg lab leak. So then we have the Conservatives pulling up to 5.7 million votes. Again, low voter turnout, as we'll see on the side. 2 million less people turned out to vote. The NDP had risen a bit, again, with the rhetoric, as they typically do. It's helping the working class. People wanted free money. They were getting COVID payments. Bloc Québécois was stable. The Green Party lost quite a few votes. And the PPC, they gained a lot of momentum, almost tripling. Again, due to being the only party talking about the mandates and the vaccine. Population steadily rose. Lots of people came in this country, not through a birth canal. And obviously that makes sense for why the population is going up so fast. But nonetheless, the numbers all align. Total votes, though, are important. Drop down by just shy of 1.3 million, bringing us down to 16.858892 million votes. Now in 2025, this is where it gets interesting. 8.3 million people come out to vote for the Liberals. Again, that number has been revised to 8.5, which is funny. But the CPC, based on everything that happened in the previous decade and what everyone got to witness with their own eyes, massive record-setting turnout for rallies, and absolute disgust in the Liberal Party itself, gets 7.9 million votes. It makes sense. They were on a steady rise. You take out 21, and with the fervor, you can get to 8 million. NDP, 1.2 million votes. A big drop. Now, the NDP didn't completely freak out this entire time that Jagmeet Singh was clearly selling out the country for a pension. So they kept enough people, in my opinion, to not drop that bad. Okay? They went down well over 50%. Would they lose about 33%? Sure. But you'll see that this is the lowest NDP vote share historically, is the largest drop as we get into it. Bloc Québécois lost a little bit. That could have gone CPC or Liberal, depending on where you are in Quebec. Quebec is a strange area for voting, to say the least. The Greens went down as well. Weird things happen with the Green Party internally, having two people running the party and running in the election is strange. And the PPC, this is a giant drop, which I find quite unbelievable. that they dropped from 840 to 134,000. Nonetheless, just look at the numbers here for election year, voter turnout percentage, votes cast, population increase, and voter turnout increase. Okay, voter turnout for the most part since 1980, you're floating between, other than 2008, of course, financial crisis, it's a little bit of a different time. You're floating between 60 and at its highs in the mid 70s here, but a pretty good voter turnout is close to 70% and is a average. Now you're looking at actual votes cast. They float with population. It's pretty bang on. All the numbers make sense. Now turnout, all these things have external implications to them, right? 1993, 97, 2000, 2004, there's a decrease, election over election. But I just wanted to show that deep because of the population increase. Nonetheless, population increase is quite substantial at 8%. Voter turnout, although, is quite a bit higher. Now, I think a good contrast is 2015. People were energized to get out and vote for legal pot, and the Liberals. Call it what it is. People voted for pot. And I believe a large turnout increase in 25 is people being exhausted with the Liberals. Do with this chart as you will. Well, let's move on. This shows 2025, 21, 2019, and 2015 in a bar chart for each party and how their voter turnout was. We'll just focus on the NDP and the CPC and the Liberals. So NDP had the largest share for the most part in 2015. 2019 is dropping, raises a bit in 2021, and plummeted in 2025. Then you see the CPC, it's pretty steady, right? A jump up in 2019, people are tired of the Liberals. Then you get to a low voter turnout year in 21 and the surge that we expect to see. You have a decline for the Liberals from 2015, steadily down to 2021, and then this massive spike in 2025. Unbelievable. But let's jump into the years after we go through voter trends. Total votes increased from 17.7 million in 2015 to 19.6 million in 2025, which is consistent with population growth. 15% from 35.9 million to 41.3 million, and a rising voter turnout of 68.3% in 2015, 62.6% in 2021, 67% in 19, and again, 68.7% in 2025. There's the math for you to do it yourself, but 68.7% is the voter turnout. Now, the Liberal Party votes 6.9 million in 2015, dropping to 6 million in 2019, and then 5.6 million in 2021, and a huge increase to 8.3 million in 25, now 8.5 million. Vote share goes from 39% to 33% to 32.6% to 43.5%. The trend, strong in 2015, majority, declined to minorities, and surged in 2025 to the highest since 1984. Conservative Party, 5.6 million. So 2015 through to 25, 5.6 million, 15, 6.2 million in 2019, 5.7 million in 2021, and 7.9 million in 2025. Vote share, 32%, 34%, almost 34%, and then 41% jumping in 2025. Then we go to the NDP, 3.5 million, 2.8 million, 3 million, and then 1.2 million. It's declining with a sharp drop in 2025. This is just a vote recap for the Liberals for each of their year. And then we've got population and total votes, ignoring voter share. Liberal votes in 25 were their highest, 21, a steady decrease. Population is rising, and total votes overall is rising. So I'll jump into the year specifically with the Liberals. The 2015 year, the Golden Boys ascendancy, coming in on sunshine, marijuana, and rainbows. Literally on marijuana and rainbows. Not a whole lot of sunshine. But there was 6.942 million votes, 39.5% of the 17.7 million total votes. Justin Trudeau was fairly charismatic to the average viewer, and he was able to flip a conservative majority into a liberal one. The vote share was robust, and it did reflect a nation smitten with a fresh face. But now we move into 2019, 4 years of scandals, and the shine is fading. Sunny ways no more, if you will. They got 6 million votes, 33.1% of the 18 million. Now, the context of that, again, many scandals, and it being Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party, that alone is enough to dissuade voters. But you have SNC-Lavalin, which was insane and still really not addressed. And you had, again, a big one, the blackface scandal, from that very interesting yearbook from a very interesting place where Mr. Trudeau did very not good things with very young women. Anyway, Mr. Trudeau's halo has been dented, and the Liberals clung to a minority government despite losing the popular vote to Conservatives, who got 6.2 million votes. They had a drop of 924,000 votes from 2015. Now, of course, because of the scandals and Justin Trudeau showing who he was, this does make sense. Then we go to 2021. We call that the stagnant sequel. Votes were 5.5 million, all right? 32.6 of the 16.8 million votes. Now, of course, this was a pandemic election that nobody wanted. Trudeau snap called and got himself a minority. The Conservatives, though, again, on the rise with the popular vote, 5.7 million. And of course, as we mentioned before, turnout did decrease. Now, going forward as well, just to address 21, not only was it an election that nobody wanted, not only were the SNC, We Charity, and other endless scandals in the rear view, but we also had, of course, Mr. Trudeau and his whole government getting caught up in the Winnipeg Lab Leak, which is really why we had that election. And then we move to 2025. Context for 2025, of course, we all know that the Conservatives were trying to get an election for over a year. The NDP were holding out with Jagmeet Singh, trying to get his $2 million pension. And then we go into last fall Parliament session, and nothing gets done because of the Green Slush Fund. Over $1 billion stolen by Liberal insiders, including cabinet members. You've got the Randy. You've got ArriveCan still being a thing that people are talking about, and another long list of scandals that is impossible to recall. Liberals are absolutely surrounded in scandals, and we're at a below 20% approval rate. But in 25, after they installed Mark Carney, who had a very weird Liberal leadership race where he got all of the votes and didn't seem to campaign at all, like it was handed to him. There's 400,000 people who got into the Liberal leadership to vote for it. They only counted like 2/3 of the votes. Very strange. Anyway, we call this 25 the miraculous resurrection because they got 8.3 million votes. Now, again, the new number is showing 8.5 million, which is very funny. But the Liberals have a landslide and their highest vote share since 1984. Okay? Do you think the Liberals, after a decade of scandals, were able to pull off their highest vote share since 1984? Does that even make any sense to anybody? No, of course it doesn't. But anyway, high turnout as well, 68.7. And we did have the Trump thing, but it's not enough in my opinion. And is also very dumb. And anyone saying that Trump is the reason why the Conservatives lost the election are out of their mind. Trump did not lose the Conservatives the election. The Conservatives, with their terrible campaign, plus blatant voter fraud, lost the election. Now, if the voter fraud wasn't there, I still believe they would have won it given such a terrible campaign. But nonetheless, the Liberals gained 2,778,476 votes from 2021, a 50% surge, leaping from 32.6% to 43.5%. That is 1.4 million more votes than the 2015 peak, even though we had an extraordinarily polarized electorate, and the Conservatives did actually genuinely surge to 7.9 million. The total vote count, 19.6 million, rose by about 2.7 million votes, meaning the Liberals snagged 100% of new voters, okay? Rose by 2.7 million votes, and the Liberals got every single one of them. All of the new voters I don't believe it for a second. So let us dive deeper into 2025. The 2025 Liberal numbers are an anomaly. They have 43.5% of the vote share out of the ashes of 32.6. 2.8 million votes increase is massive, which it absolutely dwarfs historical swings. Again, with 2015, the Liberals gained 2.4 million votes from 2011 to 2015 to a 6.9 million votes. And now somehow we are jumping up even more, again, with the decade that we have behind us. Truly, in and of itself, unbelievable. But another thing to note is that the Liberal vote spike outpaces population growth. We have an 8% population growth from 2021 to 2025, and turnout gains are about 10%. So, if you think about it, the only way for this to happen is that every new voter was magically hypnotized by the Liberal Party and Mark Carney. Does that really add up to you? Now, the NDP, their collapse is in and of itself a red flag. However, there are the blatant Jagmeet Singh explanations, but it still doesn't make sense that all of the NDP voters are going to go with all the new voters over to the Liberals. They again plummeted from 3 million to 1.2 million, a 60% drop. Historically, the NDP lowest voter turnout was 2004, where they got 15.7% of the votes. It doesn't make any sense. The Liberals, did they somehow get every NDP vote? I doubt it. So, going through turnout and the population, let us show you now the mismatch. Total votes were 19.6 million and turnout was 68.7 million, which aligns with the 41.3 million population and 28.9 million eligible voters. But the Liberals, 8.3 million votes means 43% of all ballots went red, despite, as I've been saying, a competitive conservative campaign relative to the Liberals, a terrible campaign in and of itself, but again, relative to the Liberals, yielding them 41.4% of the vote. In 2021, Liberals and Conservatives were neck and neck, 32.6 versus 33.7. How did the Liberals suddenly dominate? High turnout is a perfect cover for inflating vote counts. If polling stations or vote tabulations were tampered with, extra ballots could hide in the 2.7 million vote increase. The numbers add up, but the Liberal share feels too perfect, like a script written in Ottawa's back rooms. Liberals historically rely on Ontario and Quebec. The 2025 surge implies sweeping urban centres and flipping Conservative strongholds, yet Conservatives gained 2.2 million votes, suggesting, of course, rural and Western strength. How did the Liberals rack up 8.3 million without losing ground elsewhere? I would like to show you a chart again. 2025, Liberals, 8.3 million, vote share, 43.5 million, total votes, 19.5, population 41. This is the chart that we were looking at before, just focused to the Liberals though, 21 again, 5.5 million, dropping from 6 million and dropping from 6.9 million. The Liberals were able to jump from 5.6 million votes to 8.3 million votes from 2021 to 2025. That's a 2.7 million vote spike, 50% growth, and of course, taking of 43.5% of the total 19.6 million votes. Total votes again rose by 2.7 million, meaning the Liberals quite literally got every single new vote. This surge is a bald-faced scam. The math does not math. The Liberals did not win every single new voter. It's impossible. It doesn't make any sense. They were limping in 2021 and somehow, again, miraculously exploded in 2025 under Mark Carney's very limited time in Canada, who is plagued with scandals already before showing up. Sure, believe that if you want. But this is where I want to get into the math, assuming all PPC and NDP voters went Liberal. So in 21 to 25, this is what we're going to look at. There were 8.3 million for the Liberals. There was 7.9 million for the Conservatives, 1.2 for the NDP, and 134,000 for the PPC. The election previous, again, 5.5 million for the Liberals, 5.7 million for the Conservatives. The NDP had 3 million and the PPC had 840,000. All right. So that drop, if you add up all those new votes, brings us, funnily enough, to what the Liberals currently are claiming, which is very interesting. Nonetheless, assuming all these votes went Liberal, you got PPC losing 706,951 votes, and you've got the NDP losing 1.835990 votes. With the population growth, we can see again just shy of an 8% increase. Conservative votes, for comparison, are 7.9 million. So what we're dealing with is about 2.5 million votes, give or take, leaving the PPC and the NDP. These are our assumptions that we're making. First and foremost, the population growth distribution. Population grew by 8% from 21 to 25. We assume the Liberal vote count would grow proportionally to the population growth, reflecting an increase in the eligible voter pool and potential Liberal voters, absent of other factors. This assumes the Liberals maintain their 2021 voter base share relative to population, with growth reflecting new voters, young voters, immigrants who might lean Liberal. PPC, all 706,951 PPC lost votes and 1.835990 NDP votes are added directly to the adjusted Liberal vote count, as if these voters switched entirely to the Liberals. No other changes that we're doing with the block, the green, just focusing on these giant drops. Now, this is the step-by-step adjusting the 21 votes to 2021 Liberal votes for population growth. Liberal votes 5.5 million, population growth factor 7.9 million, brings us to, roughly speaking, round numbers, 6 million. Okay? You add the PPC lost votes, we're at 6.7 million, and you add the NDP lost votes, we are at 8,543,000. Okay? Which is really quite something, because again, when I originally did these calculations, the Liberals were at 8.3 million. I brought this up with this math to about 8.5 million. And now the Liberals are claiming 8.5 million. It's as if they did the math on their own, not knowing somebody else was doing that as well. Funny to note. Again, here's the parties: Liberals, Conservative, votes, and vote share. All right. This is 21 at the top. Sorry, rather, this is the totals with my hypothetical, and this is the totals prior to the update. So the totals in my hypothetical were 8.543,193, 43%, and again 7.9 million, and then the new Liberal total is 8.3 million. Of course, the Conservatives at 7.9. Again, these are the numbers from a couple days ago. The Liberals have now changed to basically my hypothetical. So the Liberal Party's 2025 vote count of 8,335,105, a staggering 2,778,476 vote surge from the 2021 total of 5,556,629, reeks, as Chris McKee said. It reeks, and it reeks of fraud and manipulation. The numbers simply do not add up, and they do not pass the smell test. They don't make sense under scrutiny, especially given the culture that I live in and the world that I see, and the world that you live in as well. There was not that much of a fervor around Mark Carney. It makes no sense. Could I see them surging a bit? Sure. But capturing all the new votes and all the lost votes and jumping up by 50%, it simply doesn't make sense. But with the 2021 base, if you adjust for a modest 8% population growth, again, you should have only gotten up to 6 million votes from 5.5 million. And even if you generously assume they captured every single lost vote from the NDP and the PPC between 21 and 25, that should have landed the Liberals at 8.543,193 votes. So 8,543,193. The reported votes up until literally a couple days ago and now today were 8,333,000. We now know, however, that the Liberals are reporting in Instead of my hypothetical of 8,543,000, they're up to 8,557,000. So very interesting that gain relative to my hypothetical and relative to the real numbers that they report. It is extraordinarily convenient that there is a coincidence sitting here where all of these new votes and all of the lost votes shoot over to the Liberals. It defies logic. It doesn't make any sense. It truly doesn't. So, in my opinion, it is the case, based on the math, based on the amount of votes, based on the world that we live in, and the last decade of scandals and insanity. It is my opinion. The Liberals cheated in the 2025 election. I find it extraordinarily hard to believe that they were able to capture all 2.7 million of the new votes. It doesn't make sense. I find it hard to believe that the Liberals were able to get a 50% vote surge. That doesn't make any sense. I find it hard to believe that every single voter lost by the opposition parties who do not have values that align with the Liberals. The NDP, their actual vote base, they wouldn't go Liberal. The Jack Layton NDP, the NDP that has any amount of respect and credibility, the people in the NDP, that's what they believe in. Most of them don't believe in Singh and his craziness, or believed now that he's gone. But even with that being said, if they had a meteoric drop, those folks would be sitting out or whatever. Make your own assumption. But they sure as heck would not all go to the Liberals. And the PPC sure as hell wouldn't either. The math doesn't math. If you disagree with me, let me know. But again, numbers don't lie. And if you listen closely, numbers will scream in your face. And what are these numbers screaming? They're screaming that the Liberals cheated. Now, with that being said, good night, Patriots and Liberals.